infiltration mission. You've got to stay out of sight. Before you go any further, use your binoculars.
Metal Gear? It can't be. Oh, but it can. Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes comes to Steam with Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, which is coming later this year. But are we being handed another half-hearted, shoddy console port? In a single word, no. You can tell from the moment you take control of Snake, or Big Boss, that you're about to be treated to a truly well-optimized Metal Gear Solid PC experience. The keyboard and mouse controls are executed fluidly and intuitively. If you prefer a mouse to analog, then you'll be right at home in Ground Zeroes, since mouse input is butter smooth. Whereas with most recent console ports, I've noticed a large amount of mouse smoothing and acceleration, but you won't find that here. Keyboard inputs are mapped in a very streamlined manner, in a way that makes sense. No need to use weird keys like Z or comma keys. You can tell that this port was built with PC gaming firmly in mind. The graphics are ridiculous. The newly created Fox engine flexes some serious muscle in this spectacular showcase of eye candy. The textures, lighting, tessellation, and particle effects will have you rubbing your eyes in disbelief at times. CryEngine, Frostbite, and Unreal Engine all have a new formidable challenger. What impressed me the most about the technical aspect of Ground Zeroes is that I can safely crank up the graphics settings without fear of the game dipping below 60 frames per second in most cases. Bear in mind that the recording software I'm using obviously reduces my frame rate, but without recording, I'm almost always achieving 60 glorious frames per second. I would talk about the story, but I wouldn't do it any justice in this short clip. To truly grasp the scope and scale of the events taking place within Ground Zeroes, you really have to be a committed fan of the series, and have played every game in the franchise, which may deter newcomers to Metal Gear. If this is the first Metal Gear game you played, then you will be hopelessly lost and won't have a shred of a clue what's going on. Returning veterans of the Metal Gear saga will discover a deeply satisfying narrative, and will find themselves anticipating the full release of the Phantom Pain after playing through this short prologue. I have to dig deep to find any flaws, but there are a few. I spotted a fairly nasty memory leak problem when Ground Zeroes was initially released. I believe it has been patched as of recently, since I haven't noticed the issue persisting. Another thing is that the main story mission takes roughly anywhere between 15 minutes to an hour to complete based on the player's skill level. So, it's pretty damn short. But there is a number of side missions that you can complete, which is a nice distraction, but ultimately you'll be left wanting more of the actual story. Ground Zeroes was shrouded in controversy due to its steep price tag of $40 when it was originally released on console, since it's essentially a glorified demo, let's be honest. But you can pick up the Steam version for around $20, which seems more than fair considering the amount of content that you are getting. If you're a die-hard Metal Gear fanatic like me, then this purchase is a no-brainer. But if you're a newcomer to the series, you'll find yourself in way over your head in a story you can't hope to understand without having played the past entries. Either way, I give this my recommendation. It's a technical marvel that was made with PC gaming in mind. Other ports need to take a close look at Kojima Productions, because this is how it's done.
The much anticipated third entry into the Dragon Age series has a lot of hype to live up to. But does it? The story begins 1 year after the events of Dragon Age 2. The Mages and Templars hold a conference to establish peace. However, it's short-lived when an explosion levels the conference and opens a demonic breach infesting the world with otherworldly monsters. And it falls upon your character to close the breach since they are somehow endowed with the power to do so. The story itself is a bit cliched, since it's largely centered around a chosen one, but the characters and overall design more than make up for this small shortcoming. Speaking of which, this game is gorgeous. It's obvious that a ton of effort went into polishing this game because the landscapes and scenery are really something to behold from an artistic standpoint. Just on this merit alone, I recommend Dragon Age Inquisition, but what's a game without gameplay? Inquisition takes the if it's not broken, don't fix it approach, which works well. Of course, there are a number of gameplay improvements. Unlike Dragon Age 2, Inquisition forces you to actually plan and strategize your battles, since it is possible to become overwhelmed very early on. It also makes teamwork with your allies far more fundamental than previous entries. I feel as though keyboard and mouse controls were a bit of an oversight since gameplay feels much better with the controller. It's a bit cumbersome to have to click and drag to move the camera, especially in the middle of an intense battle where every input counts and one mistake can spell death. Overall, Dragon Age Inquisition is another example of BioWare hitting it out of the park with fantastic characters and storytelling. They really have mastered the craft of immersing the player in some amazing worlds.
See for yourself.
do you believe me, Ranger?
What has happened to me?
You are banished from death.
I cannot believe how wrong I was when Shadow of Mordor's first trailer debuted. I was quick to brush it off as a generic Assassin's Creed game set in Middle-earth, and it flew way under my radar after that. I can be an idiot at times. Shadow of Mordor innovates in some truly creative ways and breathes new life into a somewhat stale action-adventure genre. The story is right on par with its silver screen counterparts too. You play as Talion, a Gondorian ranger stationed at the Black Gates of Mordor. However, your base is attacked and wiped out, along with Talion and his family, by the Urks, which is honestly a horribly dark and tragic opening. Talion is given another chance and sent back to the land of the living to exact revenge against the forces of Sauron, who killed his family. Talion is joined by a mysterious wraith who packs some very interesting abilities, which serve as a necessity during some parts of the game. You'll also notice a few familiar faces from the Lord of the Rings franchise, such as Gollum, who plays a big role in Shadow of Mordor. I swear he looks and sounds identical to his big screen counterpart, which is just awesome. Now to talk about why this is one of the absolute best games of last year. The gameplay. The way Shadow of Mordor plays will hook you nearly instantly. Hunting captains and war chiefs is so addictive, since there's a ton of them, each with their own traits, personality, strengths, and weaknesses. These are not generic NPCs. You truly feel like you're fighting a rival combatant each and every time. Shadow of Mordor makes you think and strategize as well. If a captain or war chief kills you in battle, then they get promoted and gain power, which is bad news for you the next time that you encounter them. So pick and choose your fights accordingly. The graphics really aren't anything to write home about. They're not bad either, I just find that the color palette is lacking quite a bit. But I suppose that is to be expected since it's Mordor and not Disneyland. Either way, it's possible to overlook this since the gameplay is so ridiculously fun that you won't have time to stop and admire the bleak scenery. This is easily my pick for Game of the Year 2014. It innovates on a genre that sorely needs it. If you want something new out of an action-adventure game, then look no further. Shadow of Mordor is an absurd amount of fun, which you can sink lots of hours into.
Kill the dog! Ratty head! Nanny killed the lad! Fight me blade to blade! Seriously, thing? I killed a dozen like you before breakfast! One of you lot like I will butcher you where you stand. You're nothing to me. This globe is nothing. Stay and play with me in the power. Rise something! Quick, to the beacon! Someone send up the signal fire!